Well, good morning. Happy 4th of July. And in the church we do the 14th Sunday in Ordinary Time. I would like to preach today about the second reading, beautiful reading written by St. Paul. And the second reading is how Paul, from his personal experience, is sharing with us that we are made strong when we are weak. It's very ironic because he says that it is in weakness that we show strength. Now, St. Paul is not speaking of his personal strength. He instead is talking about the strength that only comes from God. He says, brothers and sisters, that I, Paul, might not become too elated, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, an angel of Satan to beat me, to keep me from being too elated. Notice that the expression too elated appears twice in this particular passage. The New American Bible translates too elated for the Greek word upeirairomai, which literally means to be puffed up with pride. And so basically what Paul is saying, that I, Paul, might not become puffed up with pride, a thorn in the flesh was given to me. We don't know what Paul meant by a thorn in the flesh. But if any of us have experienced some piece of wood inside our flesh, we know how much that hurts. So what is that thorn in the flesh? We don't know exactly what it is, but let me guess. For example, it could be a person, a difficult person that Paul had to deal with. It could be a physical disability, perhaps an illness at the particular moment when he was writing the letter. It could be an invisible disability, something that he would rather not have. The thorn in the flesh could have been a difficult situation that he had to deal with, and he would rather not have to deal with that. The thorn in the flesh could be a personal weakness, a behavior, an addiction, a pattern of life. It could even be post-traumatic stress disorder regarding his former life before Jesus had forgiven him and called him to be an apostle. A memory of his former self nagging him and bothering him constantly. It is a thorn in the flesh. A thorn in the flesh may look small, but it's painful. You can't walk away from that pain. It's always there. Now, St. Paul says, 3 times I begged the Lord about this, that it might leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Now, the prayer of St. Paul is a prayer of begging God to get rid of this thorn in the flesh. It's very similar to the prayer of Jesus in Gethsemane, when he is praying before his passion, saying to the Father, Father, if it is your will, take this chalice away from me, but not my will, but yours. He was speaking, of course, of the chalice of suffering. Now, of course, we can think for ourselves what kind of thorns in the flesh we have to deal with. For some people, it's other people. And we can joke about that, that some people can become a thorn in the flesh with us. I think of parents that have to deal with very difficult children, or children that have to deal with very difficult parents, or spouses who have to deal with irreconcilable situations. For other people, the thorn in the flesh might be addictive behaviors, substance abuse, overeating, pornography, social media addiction. There are so many versions of this. For other people, the thorn in the flesh may be traits of their own personality. People that struggle with anger management. People that cannot keep anything to themselves before calling everyone with the latest gossip in town. people that struggle with bad language, people that struggle with generosity, people who are cheap, and everybody knows they are cheap. Or the exact opposite problem, people that have problems with the spending and end up maxing out every single credit card. And the examples can go on and on. These are thorns in the flesh that are very real in people's lives, and some of those thorns are parts of us. It's us. So this is about people that just cannot control traits of their personality, and that's us. Now, all these things are thorns in the flesh that we would rather beg the Lord to take them away from us. Our lives would be much easier without them. But the answer from the Lord is an answer that we don't like to hear. My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. St. Paul continues, I will rather boast most gladly of my weaknesses in order that the power of Christ may dwell in me. And this is the key for understanding what Paul is saying. My thorn in the flesh keeps me humble. My thorn in the flesh reminds me that I cannot overcome sin on my own, that I need a higher power, that I need God's grace in me. It is not what I accomplish, but it is what Christ accomplishes in me. I will never forget when I went to confession to a particular priest, and I confessed a habitual sin. And this priest said to me, why did you come to confession, Jose? Because you have two options. If you came with your attitude of, darn it, I did it again, that's pride, and that's a sin. So you add one more sin to your list. But if you came to beg for mercy so that Christ may help you to overcome sin, then you have come to the right place. Because it is not what you overcome your sin on your own power, but it is about Christ overcoming your sin in you. It's not about your own doing, Jose, the priest said. I'll never forget that experience. I was a young seminarian back then. St. Paul finishes his reflection by saying, therefore, I am content with my weaknesses, with insults, with hardships, with persecutions and constraints for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak, I am strong, he says. I believe that the second reading of today helps us understand fully the meaning of the other two readings, the first one and the gospel. Because in the first reading we hear of Ezekiel that was being sent to a very rebellious people. Well, the thorn in the flesh reminds me that I am that rebellious people, that I am my own thorn in the flesh. And in the gospel we hear that one cannot be prophet in one's own house. Well, the house is myself. We all preach to others, and we all fail within our own homes, meaning our bodies, our own personalities, our own behaviors. Sin makes us fail to be prophets to ourselves, even in our very own homes. But here is the good news. Jesus took upon his own body and received our thorns. And he receives those thorns of us into his own flesh. St. Paul says that when he is weak, he is strong. So when we look at Jesus on the cross, we see a broken body. He is showing us in that broken body the strength that only comes from the Father. May Jesus, who is Lord of the universe, but who made himself weak for us, give us his strength to endure our very own thorns in our flesh, so that the power of Christ may dwell in our brokenness. and that the victory over our own sin may be His and not ours. Amen.